Woo! Somebody call Thin Lizzy because the boys are back in town. Hi everybody, this is Continuous Thunder, and that is the brand new, highly anticipated album from Vampire Weekend called Father of the Bride, out now on Spring Snow and Columbia Records. Reunited, and it feels so good. So Vampire Weekend is a band that was formed in the early 2000s when all of its members were students at New York City's Columbia University. They released their first self-titled album in 2008 and quickly drew a lot of both positive and negative attention. The negative attention came from people who were accusing them of appropriating African and Caribbean styles of music, especially when their sound was coupled with their look, which embraced the preppy styles of the Ivy League college that they came from. But a lot of the negative criticism started quieting down whenever people started actually paying closer attention to the music they were creating. Some of their songs, like Oxford Comma on their self-titled album, actually criticized the elitism that their image was associated with. They went on to release two more very critically acclaimed albums, Contra and Modern Vampires of the City, the latter of which was released in 2013. Apart from the announcement that Rostam Batmanglij would be leaving the band in 2016 and a couple other side projects, both musical and not, the band was relatively quiet for 6 years. But now in 2019, we finally have the fourth Vampire Weekend album, Father of the Bride. Right out the gate, Father of the Bride does have some key features that distinguish it as a Vampire Weekend album. There's no mistaking what band created this music. However, there are some key features that differentiate it from their first three, leaving those three to create kind of like a trilogy symbolizing the first chapter in Vampire Weekend's career. The YouTube channel Middle 8 did a wonderful video essay on those albums and how they kind of symbolize that, and I will link to that video down in the description. I'm not going to go into too much more detail there. He already said everything that I would want to. Some of the things that separate this album from the band's earlier work is their normal African and Caribbean influences are present, but in a much more subdued way, in favor of newer influences like Americana and pop music and R&B music. Also, with the exception of a small number of songs, notably the song Sympathy in the middle of the album, most of the songs on this album have quite a bit more breathing room than your typical Vampire Weekend tracks. The instrumentation is far less dense and more relaxed. A lot of people are drawing comparisons between this album and jam bands such as the Grateful Dead and Phish. The band's lyrics are also a little more straightforward, with fewer metaphorical knots to untie, but that doesn't mean that they are any less dense with references, including a throwaway reference to Prince Charles Edward Stuart in the song Harmony Hall, and name-dropping the poets Keats and Yeats in We Belong Together. And the references don't stop just at the lyrics. There are a lot of musical references as well, with some tracks being built around samples. The first track on the album, Hold You Now, which features Danielle Haim from the band Haim, features a very prominent choral sample from Hans Zimmer's soundtrack to the film The Thin Red Line. Other tracks like Rich Man and 2021 are built entirely around samples from works by other artists. Despite a bright and melodic sound, the lyrics of this album actually handle some pretty dark and heavy themes, from racism to existentialism to the loss of love, and even to bonding with an enemy over a mutual dislike of a third party. This is also the first Vampire Weekend album to have artist features on it. There's the aforementioned Danielle Haim on the first track, but she is also credited as a feature on two other tracks. However, she also provides backing vocals on a couple others on this album as well. There's also features from the guitarist of the Internet, Steve Lacy, on two tracks, and he also provides some, not just guitar work, but vocal work and a couple spoken lines elsewhere throughout the album. These features are used very well, very effectively, and they only serve to improve the songs that they are included on. As excited as I am about this album, it's not perfect, and one of my major criticisms about this album is the length. It is technically a double album with 18 tracks and a runtime close to an hour. I kind of jokingly think to myself that this is what happens when you take all the complexity of an earlier Vampire Weekend album and just kind of stretch it out into the more relaxed format that this album takes. You take those old 30 and 40-minute albums, and you end up with one that's an hour long. And really the only other criticism that I have of this album, apart from the length, and this is something that you get with long albums, is some of the songs really aren't that memorable despite making sense in the context of the album. And what I mean by that is while you're listening to the album, all the songs are good and they make sense. The lyrics are good, the compositions are great, but as soon as you walk away from the album, the only one that's really sticking in your head is Harmony Hall. And while we're talking about that, that is already a contender for me personally for one of the best tracks of the year. And I was joking when I said that only Harmony Hall will stick with you. There are other good tracks on here like 2021, Sunflower, and several others. But there are some tracks on here that after the fact, you're really not going to remember much about them. Now, obviously, I am very biased in favor of this band and this album, but I'm scoring this album a 4 out of 5. I think this is a great and very welcome comeback for Vampire Weekend. They have managed to grow and mature, but still retain a lot of the elements that made people love them in the first place. I am very, very, very excited to see what else comes from this new chapter in the band's career. But that's going to do it for this round of Continuous Thunder, and now it's your turn. Did you listen to this album? Did you like it? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Go ahead and leave your thoughts down in the comments, and you can leave suggestions for the next album that I should review. A little announcement that this channel now has an Instagram account at CT Music Review, the same as the Twitter account. There will be a link to that down in the description along with the link to the Twitter account. If you follow me there, there will be announcements for new videos as well as a few other fun posts that are music related, and I might post a story every now and then to tell you what I'm listening to. Apart from that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.